Her husband bought his mistress a $460,000 oceanfront villa off the coast of Savannah, using money they had built together. 16 years of her sacrifices, her double shifts, her quiet trust, all poured into the walls of a house meant for another woman. The wind off the Atlantic carried the scent of salt and betrayal. Every dollar that had once built a dream was now painting another woman's paradise. While the city slept, the truth stood wide awake, cold, polished, and cruel. A marriage that had survived storms now broke under the weight of a secret. He believed she would never find out. He believed loyalty made her blind. But what he didn't know was that love, when betrayed, learns to calculate. The same hands that once built his empire were already building his downfall. Behind every smile she'd ever given, a quiet storm had been waiting. And tonight, that storm had finally found its tide. If you've ever trusted the wrong heart, stay with this story. What comes next will make you believe in quiet revenge and justice with a woman's name. From the outside, their life looked flawless. A white house, a manicured lawn, 2 children in college, and smiles that belonged in photo frames. People called them the couple who made it. Success, stability, admiration. It all surrounded them like sunlight. She believed in that illusion. Every late shift, every saved dollar, every sacrifice felt worth it. He often said, "We built everything together." And she believed him. Weekends at the country club, Sundays at church, dinner parties full of laughter. Each moment looked perfect. But perfection is a fragile mask. Behind the laughter, silence had grown. Conversations turned brief, smiles mechanical. At night, she would lie beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering when warmth had turned into routine. Still, she convinced herself it was normal. Love changes with time, she thought. And yet, a small voice inside whispered that something was slipping away. She ignored it. She had faith. In him, in their family, in what they had built. But faith, like glass, can shatter quietly long before it breaks. The shift came slowly, almost politely. First, small purchases she didn't recognize. Designer perfume, expensive dinners charged to their joint account. Then came the scent on his clothes, unfamiliar and young. He began guarding his phone, smiling at messages he never shared. Work trips stretched from days to weekends. When she asked, he brushed it off with a tired grin. Deals take time, you know that. She tried to believe him. She tried to believe in them. But unease lingered like humidity before a storm. Every night, she watched the clock, waiting for headlights in the driveway. Some nights they came, some they didn't. When they did, his kiss was quick, rehearsed, distracted. Her heart began to memorize the pattern of absence. Denial became her shield, but it was thin and trembling. Love, she realized, was no longer soft. It was sharp, full of edges, and she was already bleeding from holding it too tightly. It happened on an ordinary Thursday. She was folding laundry when her phone buzzed. A number she didn't know. One message, one photo. Her husband, smiling with a younger woman, their hands intertwined like a promise. No caption, no explanation. The world around her seemed to vanish, leaving only the image burning into her chest. She sank into a chair, the phone trembling in her hands. 16 years of trust crumbled in a single heartbeat. She remembered anniversaries, laughter, shared plans, and felt them die in silence. There were no tears, only disbelief. The woman in the photo looked carefree, untouched by guilt, and he looked happy, too happy. The clock ticked loud, cruel, reminding her that everything she believed in had an expiration date. That night, the walls of their home echoed differently. They no longer held love. They held the ghost of it. The next morning, the sun rose without mercy. She hadn't slept. The house felt foreign, hollow. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam curling from her untouched coffee. She could confront him, but what then? More lies, more shame. Her mother's voice echoed in memory. A wise woman doesn't chase chaos. She plans. So she did. A notebook, a pen, and quiet determination. She began to document everything: dates, bank transfers, excuses, late calls. Each detail became a small truth, collected like evidence in a silent trial. Grief cooled into focus. Pain became precision. The woman who once built his world was now preparing to dismantle it. She smiled for the first time in days, not from joy, but from clarity. He thought she was fragile. He mistook grace for weakness. But patience, she learned, can be the sharpest weapon. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was strategy. Days blurred into a quiet pattern of research and restraint. She searched for a private investigator and found one through a friend at work, a woman named Carla, discreet and sharp-eyed. They met in a cafe where no one knew them. Selena slid a photo across the table and said only one sentence: "Find out where he hides the truth." Within days, reports began to arrive. Bank transfers under new account names, withdrawals disguised as business expenses. One company name repeated itself, a shell business that didn't exist 6 months ago. She stared at the numbers, realizing each dollar was stolen from her life, her trust, her years of faith. It wasn't anger she felt anymore. It was calculation. Late at night, she logged into their shared account, tracing his transactions like a map to betrayal. The deeper she looked, the clearer the pattern became. He wasn't preparing for retirement or new investments. He was building something meant to replace her, and she intended to find it before he finished. A week later, Carla delivered a thick envelope. Inside were photos, receipts, and a property contract. Her husband had purchased a villa overlooking the ocean in Seaview Bluff. The name on the document wasn't his. It belonged to that fake company. But his signature was there, bold and proud. She flipped through the pages until she saw another name: Tessa Lane, the woman from the photograph. The mistress had a mansion, paid for by the years Selena had worked, waited, and believed. For a moment, silence pressed around her. Then came the smile, small, cold, certain. He thought he'd bought a dream. He'd actually built a trap. She whispered to herself, "He's building a prison, and I already hold the key." The air felt different after that, clearer, sharper. The pain was still there, but it no longer ruled her. Power had taken its place. For the first time, she wasn't surviving. She was planning. She called Nina, her closest friend, a lawyer who'd seen too many broken promises end in court. They met in Nina's kitchen, papers spread across the table like battle maps. Nina listened in silence, then said, "We can turn this around, but you have to stay quiet." Together, they examined every asset, every shared account, every loophole. Legally, any property purchased with marital funds could be contested. If he bought that house using joint money, half of it already belonged to her. They could file a petition before he even realized he'd been discovered. It would make her a co-owner by law. Selena felt something shift inside her, a sense of control she hadn't known in months. Nina smiled, the kind of smile women share when they've chosen not to be victims. That night, the plan was set in motion. No threats, no confrontation, only quiet precision. He had no idea that his betrayal had just made her stronger than ever. Every morning began the same: coffee, silence, and a plan. She opened a new bank account under her maiden name. Each week, she transferred small amounts, nothing noticeable, but steady. She photographed every document, every bill, every investment statement. Their home office became her war room. Stacks of paper filled the drawers, labeled and dated. To anyone else, it looked like routine bookkeeping. To her, it was protection. She learned to track numbers like clues in a mystery. Each dollar Marcus tried to hide became a mark of her foresight. The fear that once lived in her chest turned into discipline. She understood money in a new way. It wasn't comfort anymore. It was armor. With every signature she copied, every password she saved, she was reclaiming her future. He thought she was too trusting to notice, but she noticed everything. And soon he would learn that trust, once broken, becomes the sharpest edge. Nights grew long and hollow. The house that once echoed with laughter now whispered with ghosts. She sat in the living room, the glow from an old wedding photo flickering on the wall. In the picture, they looked unbreakable. She reached out to touch the frame, and tears finally came. Slow, quiet, unashamed. There was no one to see them, no one to comfort her. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was mourning for the woman she used to be. She whispered, "Cry tonight, so you can laugh tomorrow." Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. She folded the photo face down as if to close a chapter. Outside, rain tapped against the windows, steady and endless. It felt like the world was cleansing itself, washing away the last of her denial. She sat there until dawn, exhausted but lighter. Grief had emptied her heart. Now there was space for something else to grow, clarity. And from clarity, power. He started talking again, as if nothing in their world had changed. Over dinner, he mentioned a new project, his voice filled with pride. She smiled and listened, her heartbeat steady beneath her calm face. He talked about investors, timelines, and opportunity. Every word was a confession disguised as ambition. She asked small questions, letting him believe she was interested. He relaxed, unaware she was memorizing everything he said. He even showed her a few sketches, plans for a coastal property. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't blink. She reached for her wine, her tone soft. "It sounds amazing," she said. "You've always had great vision." He smiled, fooled by her gentleness. In his arrogance, he gave her the information she needed. The company's name, the date of the signing. When he leaned back, confident in his lies, she had already begun to dismantle them. He thought she was still his loyal wife. She thought he was already a case study in betrayal. By the time dessert arrived, the trap was set, and he didn't even know he'd walked straight into it. 3 days later, her phone rang with a quiet buzz. Carla's voice came through calm and precise. "The signing is this Friday, 3 o'clock, Seaview Bluff." Selena closed her eyes, letting the words settle like a countdown. She wrote the date in her notebook, circled it twice, and underlined it. Friday at 3. The moment truth would flip its balance. For months, she had collected evidence, moved money, and kept her silence. Now, every secret she'd buried would surface. The irony wasn't lost on her. He'd chosen the same day their first house closed 16 years ago, the day they promised forever. That promise would end at the exact same hour. That night, she stood by the window, staring at the moonlit yard. There was no anger left, only focus. She whispered, "Friday, 3 o'clock," like a prayer to her future self. Justice, she knew, had perfect timing. Nina worked with quiet precision. Stacks of paper filled her desk. Each page was another step toward freedom. By law, any property purchased during marriage belonged to both partners. Selena didn't need revenge, she needed proof. On Thursday afternoon, the petition was filed. By evening, it was approved. Her name was now printed beside his on the villa's deed. Half the house, half his secret, half his shame, now legally hers. She ran her finger across the seal, feeling its weight. It wasn't about possession, it was about power reclaimed. She called Nina, her voice steady. "Everything's in motion," her friend said. For the first time in months, Selena exhaled without trembling. He believed he was untouchable. He believed she would crumble. But now, every legal line on that paper whispered the same truth. He had built his dream on her foundation, and she had just taken back the ground beneath his feet. Friday came, dressed in quiet sunlight. She packed with deliberate care. Documents, phone, lipstick, one chilled bottle of champagne. The flight to Savannah felt endless, but her mind was steady. When she stepped into the villa, the air smelled of salt and new paint. The place was stunning. White walls, glass doors, and a view that melted into the ocean. For a fleeting second, she imagined it as their dream, not his betrayal. Then she remembered who had paid for it, and the warmth vanished. She placed the bottle on the marble table and poured a single glass. Not for celebration, but ceremony. Each tick of her watch echoed louder. She walked through the rooms, her heels silent on the polished floors. At 2:59, she sat down, crossing her legs, glass in hand. The reflection in the window showed a woman transformed, no longer waiting for love, only for justice. At 3, the sound of tires broke the silence. The storm had arrived. The front gate opened with a soft mechanical hum. She watched from the sofa as a sleek black car rolled into the driveway. 2 silhouettes stepped out, his confident stride, her youthful laughter. They looked perfect together, for a lie. He held a bottle of wine. She carried flowers. Their voices floated through the air, full of anticipation. The key turned in the door. Then, silence. They stepped inside and froze. The woman on the sofa didn't move. She sat like she belonged there, because she did. His face drained of color. Her smile faltered into confusion. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then she lifted her glass, calm and deliberate. "Welcome home," she said, her tone quiet but cutting through the air like glass. The ocean roared behind her as if the earth itself applauded. He had brought his secret to paradise, and found his reckoning waiting in the living room. The room held its breath. The waves outside crashed once, then faded into silence. She didn't move, didn't blink. Only her voice cut through the still air, low, steady, unshaken. "Welcome to my beach house." No anger, no tremor, just fact. The words hung between them, sharp as glass. He stood frozen in the doorway, hands still gripping the keys. The young woman looked from him to her, confusion turning to fear. The champagne glass in Selina's hand barely trembled. For a moment, time felt stretched, every heartbeat loud. He tried to speak, but found nothing to say. The woman on the sofa smiled faintly, a queen at the end of battle. Every lie he had told had brought him here, to this quiet reckoning. No one moved, no one breathed. Only the sound of the ocean filled the space again, as if the world itself was waiting for her next move. His mouth opened, then closed again. "Selina, how did you—" The words stumbled over each other, useless. She set her glass down, opened her briefcase, and pulled out a single folder. Inside was the deed to the villa, her name printed beside his. She handed it to him, calm as ever. "You used our money," she said softly. "You signed for this with my earnings. You built her house with my work." He blinked at the papers, disbelief draining into shame. He looked smaller now, stripped of his charm, his confidence. "You signed away my trust," she continued, "and that's something you'll never buy back." He stammered again, hands shaking. For years, he had built his empire on control. Now, control had shifted. She was holding it, quietly, completely. The silence between them wasn't just heavy, it was judgment. The younger woman finally spoke. Her voice trembled. "What is she talking about? You said you were divorced." He didn't answer. The truth filled the room before he could deny it. Tessa's eyes widened, rage mixing with humiliation. "You lied to me!" she shouted, her voice breaking. "You said you were free!" He tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped back. Tears burned her eyes, anger shaking her frame. She threw the keys at his chest. "You told me this was our future!" The impact echoed across the marble floor. Selina stayed silent, watching without malice. There was no satisfaction, only closure. The young woman turned toward her, eyes wet but clear. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I know," Selina replied. "Now you do." Tessa nodded once, grabbed her purse and walked out into the sunlight. The door slammed shut, and just like that, the illusion of his perfect secret life was gone. The sound of the door still hung in the air when the shouting began again. Marcus turned, desperate. "Please, listen." Selina didn't. She watched him crumble. His words poured out, apologies, excuses, promises, but they meant nothing. Outside, Tessa's sobs turned into curses that bled through the walls. She heard the sound of her car door slam, tires scraping against gravel. Selina looked at the spot where the young woman had stood and felt a strange pity. Two women, both deceived by the same man, both losing something they never deserved to lose. One lost her illusions. The other lost her patience. He reached toward her, but she stepped back. "Don't," she said. "You've already taken enough." The words stopped him cold. She didn't need to scream. Her silence was louder than rage. He bowed his head, the weight of his lies finally too heavy to carry. She reached into her briefcase once more, this time pulling out a different folder. "These," she said evenly, "are the divorce papers." His eyes widened. "You can't mean—" "I mean exactly that," she interrupted. "You can sign now, or we can do this in court. Either way, I win." He swallowed hard, reading the pages that ended 16 years of marriage. Her voice stayed calm. "The house, the assets, alimony, it's all there. Fair and legal." He looked up, desperate. "We can fix this, please." "No," she said, final and cold. "You broke it. You fix your own life now." She handed him a pen. The sound of ink scratching across paper was the only sound left. When he finished, she took the folder back, slid it into her case, and stood. "This was your dream house," she said quietly. "Now it's my beginning." Then she walked away, leaving him to face the ruins he built. His calm shattered the moment she turned toward the door. He slammed the papers onto the table, his voice breaking. "You can't do this to me!" The anger came too late, too loud. She turned, her face unreadable. "I'm not doing anything," she said softly. "You did." He pointed at her, desperate, shaking. "This house was mine." Her eyes met his, steady and cold. "You built this house with lies," she said. "That's why it will never stand." He fell silent. The words hit harder than any scream. The walls that once echoed his confidence now held only shame. He looked around, realizing everything he thought was his was slipping away. Papers, money, property. None of it could buy back what he'd lost. And her silence, her composure, made him smaller still. By the time she turned away again, he wasn't a husband anymore, just a man surrounded by the wreckage of his own making. She walked toward the open door, the soft wind carrying the scent of salt and rain. Her heels clicked once, twice, then stopped. For a moment, she looked back, not at him, but at the life that had just ended. He stood motionless, a shadow in the doorway, eyes filled with something between anger and regret. Behind him, the champagne glass lay shattered on the floor. The sound of his breathing was uneven, almost a sob. She stepped outside, letting the sea air lift her hair. Freedom had a scent. Clean, unfiltered, endless. Every step she took away from that house was a step toward herself. Behind her came the crash of something breaking, maybe a picture frame, maybe his pride. She didn't look back. Some endings didn't need witnesses. By the time she reached the car, the sky was opening above her, wide and light. The storm had passed, and she was still standing. Months followed, slow and relentless. 6 hearings, dozens of documents, endless signatures. Marcus tried to fight at first, but the evidence was merciless. Emails, transfers, contracts, it was all there. His lawyer urged him to settle. He did. The court ruled in her favor. She kept the family home, the majority of their assets, and the villa by the sea. When the verdict came, she didn't celebrate. She simply closed the folder, thanked her lawyer, and walked out into the sunlight. Outside the courthouse, the world felt strangely quiet. Freedom didn't roar, it whispered. He had lost everything except his guilt. She had gained nothing material that truly mattered, but she had reclaimed herself. It took 6 months to untangle 16 years, but she did it with grace. And when it was over, she smiled for the first time without pain. Justice didn't feel sweet. It felt clean. The villa no longer felt haunted. Sunlight filled every corner, chasing out the ghosts. She painted the walls soft cream, replaced the curtains, filled the rooms with quiet music. Each nail she drove into the wall was a statement. I own this now. I own myself. What had once been the setting of betrayal became the stage of rebirth. She began renting the place to vacationers, laughing when she said, "It pays for itself now." The irony wasn't bitter, it was poetic. Every booking became proof that pain could turn into profit, loss into legacy. In the evenings, she'd sit on the deck with a glass of wine, watching the waves roll in. No anger, no grief, just peace. The house that once broke her now sheltered her future. Freedom didn't come from running away, it came from staying and rewriting the story. Her children came home one weekend, filling the house with laughter again. They had known the truth for months. At first, they were angry, protective, ready to take sides, but she taught them calm. "Anger burns fast," she said. "Dignity lasts longer." They listened, watched, learned. When they saw her smile again, they understood. They visited the villa, helped her repaint the porch, and stayed for dinner overlooking the ocean. There were no tears left between them, only pride. They didn't speak of their father often, but when his name came up, it no longer hurt. They knew who had built their home. They knew who had kept it standing. One evening, her son hugged her and whispered, "You taught us strength without shouting." She smiled and said, "That's the only kind worth keeping." The ocean breeze carried their laughter through the open windows, and, for the first time, the house truly felt alive. Months after the divorce, his empire began to crumble. Rumors spread through the real estate world faster than he could stop them. Investors pulled their money, partners stopped returning calls. Every handshake that once felt solid now slipped away like sand. His reputation, built over decades, dissolved in weeks. The same papers that once praised him now printed his scandal. He tried to fight back, press releases, apologies, denials, but the truth was louder. The man who lived for success now sat in empty offices, watching his name fade from the walls. At night, he drove past the villa, its windows glowing warm with life that no longer included him. He didn't stop. He couldn't. For the first time, he saw what he had truly lost. It wasn't the house or the money. It was the woman who had given both meaning. The man who once built dreams for others now had nothing left to build for himself. Tessa left Savannah quietly. No forwarding address, no goodbye. Just a short message sent one early morning. "Thank you for opening my eyes." Selina read it once, then again. There was no bitterness in it, only release. The young woman had been lost in his promises, and now she was free of them. Selina replied with 2 words, "Take care." It was enough. Some lessons didn't need revenge, they just needed clarity. Later that day, she walked along the beach where the ocean erased every footprint within minutes. She smiled at the horizon, thinking how life was like that. You could start again, even after everything had been washed away. For the first time, she wished the other woman well. They had both survived the same storm, and survival was its own kind of victory. Her mornings looked different now. No deadlines, no waiting. She woke with the sun and stretched into quiet space. Yoga became her new rhythm, each breath untying the knots that years of marriage had left behind. She learned to paint, color spilling across canvas, messy and free. Sometimes she painted the ocean. Sometimes she painted herself. She laughed more, softer at first, then louder, until it filled the house. Friends noticed the change. "You look lighter," they said. And she did. There was no man in her story anymore, no savior, no villain, just her. She didn't need anyone to heal her. Healing had been there all along, waiting for her to choose it. In the quiet afternoons, she would whisper a simple truth. "I'm not what he broke. I'm what I rebuilt." And every word felt like breath returning to her chest. Time softened everything, but it didn't erase it. She kept one photograph on her desk, not of the past, but of the woman she became. Every scar had shaped her strength. She no longer hated betrayal, she understood it. Pain had been her teacher, patience her degree. Over dinner with friends, someone asked if she believed in forgiveness. She smiled and said, "I believe in timing." They laughed, not realizing she meant every word. She lifted her glass and added, Betrayal doesn't destroy strong women. It just teaches them how to sign the right papers at the right time. The table fell silent. Then applause broke the quiet. They called her brave. But bravery had never been the goal. Peace was. And she had finally found it. Evening light spilled across the ocean, gold and endless. She stood on the villa's balcony, the wind soft against her face. Below, waves kept their steady rhythm. Rise, fall, repeat. She thought about everything she had lost and everything she had gained. When someone takes your trust, you can spend your life chasing it back. Or you can take back yourself. She raised her glass, the sea reflecting its shimmer. To freedom, she whispered. It wasn't triumph, it was peace. Her story wasn't about revenge, it was about return. A woman reclaiming her place in her own life. She turned toward the camera of her own making. Her future, her voice, her truth. If you've ever been broken, she said softly, and still found the strength to stand, share this story. And remember, you're worth more than the pain you survived. The screen faded to the sound of waves and the quiet power of a woman who had finally come home.